Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's Information Week webinar, 5 Ways to Jumpstart AI, sponsored by Dell and broadcast by Informa. I'm Peggy Bresnick-Kendler, and I'm with Information Week. I'll be your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. This webinar is designed to be interactive. The dock of widgets at the bottom of your screen will allow you to learn about today's speaker, download resources, share this webinar via social media outlets, and participate in the Q&A session that takes place at the end of our presentation. The slides will advance automatically throughout the event. You may also download a copy of the slides via the Resources widget. Toward the end of the webinar, we will ask you to complete our survey. It's found on the right-hand side of your screen. Please take a moment to fill this out before leaving us today, as your feedback will provide us with valuable information on how we can improve future events. And finally, if you experience any technical problems, please click the Help widget found at the bottom of your screen, or type your issue into the Q&A area, and we will be glad to offer one-on-one assistance. Now on to today's presentation, 5 Ways to Jumpstart AI. Discussing today's topic is Ramesh Radhakrimanan, Office of the CTO, Server and Infrastructure Systems at Dell Technologies. Ramesh is a distinguished engineer on the CTO team in the Server and Infrastructure Solutions Group at Dell, where he drives technology strategy for advanced analytics, machine learning, and deep learning. At Dell, he's led technology strategy and architecture in the areas of energy-efficient use server architecture, ARM and Xeon D, Microsoft Hybrid Cloud, and workload optimized systems. He's a member of the Dell Patent Committee and has published 15 patents. Ramesh, over to you.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. I'm excited to talk to you today about 5 ways to jumpstart artificial intelligence. This is the time to get started with AI. If you're not already started, AI and machine learning are impacting industries and organizations everywhere. So in this webinar, we'll go over 5 ways on how you can get started or improve your existing AI processes. So, as I mentioned, the time to get started is now, because organizations across all industries are impacted. So if you are not already taking a look at how to use AI and improve your own processes or your own methods, you can be rest assured that your partners and your competitors are actually using this, right? So it's being used to automate processes, it's used to augment existing capabilities, and all different types of operations. So even within a standard enterprise company, you might have AI techniques being used across different business organizations. So if you think about a large company that has sales and marketing, it has supply chain management, procurement, as well as product development, you might be using the same AI and machine learning techniques across all of these, but to impact the businesses in different ways. So, what we're showing over here is kind of just a graphic to show how, the AI trend is actually accelerating. So, today, 59% of organizations have deployed AI, right? So I'm sure the rest, 40%, is taking a serious look at how they can get jumpstart. Now, most of these organizations only have, 4 or 5 projects on the average that they have in flight, right? But if you look at the trend, and based on what's actually coming down by 2022, this is going at a much higher pace, where they expect to see about 35 projects in flight where they're going to be deploying AI. So what is the key issues that enterprises are facing today when it comes to adopting AI? because everyone understands the value, everyone understands, the ROI of AI projects. But there is still a steep curve in terms of the adoption, right? So there are three main reasons. So one is that AI skill sets are high in demand, right? So as you can imagine, data scientist is a unicorn these days, with everyone wanting to hire the best data scientists. So that's really a limited resource, and therefore most companies will not be able to get the right resources that they need in order to become successful in AI. The other is having the right processes in place, right? When it comes to your own infrastructure, when it comes to your own data lakes, making sure that everything is plumbed the right way so that your AI projects can be successful. And the third is, one of the key ones. It's not enough to just have the right data and right resources. A lot of times, even if you have those, projects fail because at the very start, you didn't set the right expectations when you start on a project. So it's kind of very important to actually talk with the business owners and everybody else playing a role to make sure that the project is well defined and the expectations are set. And then you can go ahead and pick the right AI algorithms. You can make sure the right folks are part of your team in order to make it a success. So how do you solve those problems? If you are looking at leveraging AI, or if you are already using AI but you want to do more. So one of the ways that you can do that is, stand on the shoulder of giants, right? So today, a lot of the machine learning techniques or algorithms are being developed by large technology companies like Google and Microsoft, and we can leverage those, the research that they have done, right? The other thing is to actually work and partner with the right companies in the industry and use solutions that they have put in the market. So in order to address some of the issues that we talked about in the previous slide, things about not having the right talent, not having the right software to take advantage of your data lakes and make it ready for machine learning projects. There are a lot of companies that have sprung up in the AI ecosystem that look at tackling these specific problems. So at Dell Technologies, we have an AI solutions portfolio that includes not just infrastructure, but also offerings with our AI partners in this space, which are customized for different industries and for different environments, all the way from edge solutions all the way to core and cloud solutions as well. So one of the advantages is that it enables quicker development of your AI projects. You are not expected to have experts who understand the hardware infrastructure used for AI or have the right software expertise in order to be able to put the AI platform together, which does the end-to-end project in a very seamless fashion. So let's take a quick look at what are the 5 important things to consider when you start an AI project, or to take a look at your existing AI project and see how you can find improvement or optimize so that you could do more projects with using the same resources or add some additional resources and get more done. So these are the key 5 items that you need to keep in mind and what we're going to cover. One is, you need to have an end goal in mind, and that needs to be well defined, right? So it's not enough to just hire a few data scientists who understand machine learning and have them kind of just go off and try to do an AI project on their own. It needs to be tied in with business KPIs, with business goals. The second is to understand your data. Obviously, data is what drives machine learning. So you need to make sure that you have the right data sources and then the right tools to work on that data and get it ready for machine learning. You want to make sure that you have all the right tools and skills in order to finish the AI project that you're kicking off. So before the project starts, it's a good idea to actually take inventory of what you have and see what it is that you need to augment. Who do you need to hire? What tools do you need in order to make sure your team can succeed? And that goes into the next point of assembling the right team. So if you don't have the right folks in your team, you might want to borrow from some other teams. You want to make some new hires, or you might want to outsource and use a software to do that. Right? And then finally, you want to decide who you're going to partner with. Right? We hope you partner with Dell Technologies because we have a lot of these tools. We've been working with a lot of customers and end users and going with them on this AI journey together. So that was kind of a quick overview of the 5 different steps. Let's talk a little bit about each of those steps in more detail. So one of the reasons in order to have the goal in mind is that you want to assign the right people across your organization to the tasks that you have at hand, right? So this is not possible without having the right goals. Now, if you can take customer service or sales recommendation. You can use AI to automate these processes, and they can be used to speed up things like response times, reduce errors. So that is kind of your end goal, and then that kind of drives what it is that you're using, the type of machine learning algorithms. It drives what is the data that is needed for you to achieve those goals. And then having a set of pass-fail metrics defined ahead of time is critical as well, because otherwise you could just keep iterating over and over again, trying to find the best solution. But in many cases, depending on the use case, a solution that performs at a lower level might actually be good enough to achieve the business goals that you had in mind. Moving on to knowing your data. So once you identify the use case or the project within your organization, it becomes very important that you focus on data first before you actually start your project, right? So in many cases, this is stage 1. So once you take a look at your data, it is important to gauge the quality of the data, because the AI or machine learning algorithm that's being used is only as good as the data that you feed it. So you want to make sure that you have all the necessary data. Sometimes you might have to acquire additional data that's outside your organization. And this might come from new sources, which might be public sources. It might be things like weather information, GPS information that is used to augment the existing data that you have. And even if it's data that you have within your organization, there are silos within multiple organizations that prohibit data from being used. So sometimes it becomes too late within the project when those hurdles come up. It's a good idea to actually take a look at the data lineage and figure out that you can have access to the data that you need. And then once you clean, normalize, and get the data ready for machine learning, you also want to make sure that you're not transferring data all over your organization from one infrastructure stack to another. Right? It's important to have all the data available to your data scientists, to your machine learning engineers, to your business analysts, for them to consume without having to wait while data gets moved from one data center to another because they don't have access to it. So from there, you have your data ready. You have identified all the data sources, and now your data scientists or machine learning teams can actually start to work on the data, get it ready for your actual machine learning projects. So this is where tools and skills become critical. So you want to make sure that you automate a lot of these processes, because you'll find out very quickly that a lot of these steps are being repeated across your project. So you might complete one project, and you might go and do those same steps for your next project. So automating a lot of those tasks give you the opportunity to actually build skills to work on things that are differentiation, that create value. So the good news is that there are a lot of tools, a lot of platforms that have done a great job of automating a lot of these mundane tasks that are done within each of these projects. So you want to make sure that your data scientists are actually being productive and working on things that you hired them to do, as opposed to go and work on code, trying to plumb two different tools together, because you could have hired a software engineer and paid them less to kind of get that done for you. So it's important that you know the tools, you identify what's there in the ecosystem in terms of platforms, in terms of tools that match the requirements that you have. So in some cases, you're trying to find tools to augment missing skills that might exist in your organization. So from there, which leads to assembling the right team. Right? So once you've identified, what it is that you need in terms of tools, in terms of gauging the skill set that is needed for getting that project completed, you have to go and make sure that you have, all the right people in order to push that project into completion. So it includes, having the business analyst, having a sponsor for that particular project. In many cases, people just, focus on getting the right, skills in terms of the machine learning engineer. So they hire PhDs or they hire someone, very experienced data scientist, and they might create a great model for you to use. But in order to put that model into production, there's a lot of different teams that have to come into play, that have to interact and get, put a lot of different types of processes in order to put a machine learning algorithm in production. So in many cases in the industry, they call this the last mile problem. It's actually that last step where you have trained models, but now you're taking that and integrating it with your existing processes, or putting it into your application, or hosting it, on the cloud so that your apps can access it to make predictions, to make informed decisions. That becomes the most critical part. So now let's jump into, deciding who to partner with. So once you identified the right teams, once you identified all the tools, it becomes important that, you pick someone to partner that can help you down this journey, right? So as mentioned in the previous step, this is a process that involves not just having the right type of software resources, the right type of hardware resources. In many cases, you want to have resources that can help you with consulting to identify what it is that you actually need in terms of software, in terms of tools, in terms of data, and then which technologies to use. So when you look in the industry to identify these capabilities, you could either go and talk to different partners, each of them which offer parts of the solution, or you could talk to some partners that actually work with across the industry and have an end-to-end solution, and a top-to-bottom solution that can help you on this part of the journey as well. So in many cases, there are companies that are just getting started, and they just want some help with understanding what tools they need, how to identify the goals, how to put together the team. And on the other hand, there are experienced companies that already have projects in flight, but they want to do more. They want to take the maximum advantage of the data that they've collected, and they're trying to harness, for example, their customer information and improve the customer experience. But they want to do it using, automated tools so that they can do more with the existing teams that they have. So what I'm going to talk about next is a few of the vendors or partners that Dell EMC has been working with over the last year or year and a half. These are leaders in their space when it comes to machine learning platforms. And we have found that one of the key problems that we need to address when it comes to organizations that are trying to get started with machine learning or trying to do more with their existing teams is on finding the right platform. Right? So we talked about a couple of key hurdles that is very commonly faced in the industry. So one of them is having access to the right talent. So the first two partners that I'm going to talk about is DataRobot and S2O. And these are pioneers in their area who came up with what's called AutoML. And these are targeted for what's called citizen data scientists. So this is, think of a business analyst or an engineer that is a domain expert, but they want to start using machine learning to improve a certain aspect of your job. Right? So you might be working on a project with a domain expert, and you have a couple of data scientists to help you on this journey. But it would be good if the domain experts themselves can also do part of the machine learning. So what this tool lets you do is automate a lot of the routine tasks that we talked about earlier in order to democratize machine learning. A lot of these tasks are involved around building AI or machine learning models. And both data scientists and non-data scientists can use this to quickly build very accurate predictive models. And this can be done without the need for any specialized training and without learning how to actually do code. So DataRobot actually goes through a training process in which it identifies the most accurate model to use based on the data that you've fed it. Now, it can use both structured and unstructured data as well. So this is, DataRobot has had experience working with large financial corporations, with insurance companies, telecommunication companies. So they've tuned and automated their models to a variety of use cases. Now, one of the key aspects of DataRobot is that although it is targeted for citizen data scientists, if you have experienced data scientists, it can augment their capabilities and let them work on more projects than they typically do without a tool like DataRobot, because a lot of the processes that they do is now automated for them, and they can leverage DataRobot to actually do more, and a lot of the tasks that are common across different projects are handled by this tool. Another key aspect we talked about was the last mile problem, where once you have your trained model, how do you put it in production? So this being an end-to-end platform also does help in that aspect. So DataRobot has ML ops capability, which is machine learning operations, which is where once you have a trained model, that model can be easily deployed, and you get an API. You can generate APIs for your applications to use that trained model. And it's just not publishing the model, but also looking at how that model is doing and how is it performing. In a lot of cases, that skill set is very hard to come by in the industry, and tools like DataRobot can help solve those for you. So when we work with DataRobot, one of the things that we did is identifying what is the right hardware stack to deploy DataRobot. So we work with DataRobot to identify a few key hardware stamps that meet the requirements of an organization that might be getting started with machine learning, as well as for organizations that have very large teams of data scientists and want to use DataRobot. So for this, we use our PowerEdge servers that have Intel AI optimized processors. We leverage fast NVMe storage for storing the data set. These are connected and offered as an integrated solution where you have storage, networking, and compute all predefined, optimized, and configured. There are DataRobot software has been validated and tested, and this can also run on virtualized environments on top of VMware ESX, so that existing IT teams can leverage the solution that we put together and deploy their existing data centers. The figure here is showing how it's connected to a single server with 4 compute nodes. As you scale up the number of users and you want to do more projects or support more number of data scientists, there are ways on how you can scale this out. So there, at the end of the webinar, there's going to be links to the architecture for this, as well as the compute requirements, and it talks about all the different capabilities and features that the solution offers. So moving on, the second partner that I want to discuss is Iguazio. Iguazio is also an end-to-end data science platform. And one of the key aspects of Iguazio is that it has pipeline orchestration built into it. So we talked about automation. Iguazio allows you to use a user-friendly environment which is integrated with its workflow management. And it not only lets you deploy and automate a machine learning project, but it also helps with things like experiment tracking. And there are ways on which you can plug in some existing AutoML tools in order to automate the model building process as well. So at a higher level, that's the user interface, which makes it easy for data science teams to leverage Iguazio. But a key value of Iguazio underneath is that it runs a very, very optimized cloud-native stack. So it is built on top of something called serverless automation, which allows you to run all these managed services. And these could be streaming services like Kafka, could be analytics services like Spark, and then deep learning applications like Kubeflow, PyTorch, and event-driven apps, all within a cloud-native platform. So you can deploy it on a fixed infrastructure, but you can think of it as a private scalable cloud where depending on the requirements of your team, you spin up or spin down the services as needed. Now, Iguazio is also targeted for very high performance environments. The hardware infrastructure that's used to run their real-time data layer, which is a key aspect in machine learning, as we talked about. It leverages NVMe storage and is built on their own proprietary storage stack. And it allows you to use different types of data like time series data, event-driven data. You can use NoSQL, SQL, and different types of file systems at very highest performance. So, from a higher level, you can have a data science workbench. You can use your Jupyter notebooks. It's integrated into the managed services that Iguazio offers. And it's built on top of serverless frameworks. So when looking at the infrastructure stack that's used for Iguazio, you can see that it's built on, again, PowerEdge platforms. You have 3 platforms that are configured with NVMe drives that form the data layer that we talked about. Those are the bottom systems that you see here. The PowerEdge C6420, which is 4 compute nodes, is running the cloud-native stack. So it's running Kubernetes, and then you run managed services on this particular system. And one of the advantages of this end-to-end platform is that the data layer and the compute layer are disaggregated. So you can scale compute or storage as needed, depending on your team's needs. So we think Iguazio is a great solution for running and hosting the platform for an expert data science team, because it offers very high-end capabilities. And it also is capable of a hybrid operation where it can connect to an external cloud or a public cloud in order to burst your workload to the cloud if that is needed as well, because it's running on Kubernetes and cloud-native environments. So now moving on to the next ecosystem partner that we work with. This is a company called H2O.ai. And H2O.ai is well known in the industry for their open source machine learning platforms, as well as the algorithms that they developed. They were the pioneers in developing a commonly used algorithm called XGBoost and making it high performance, allowing it to be run on distributed clusters, leveraging multiple compute nodes. However, it's more than just machine learning algorithms. H2O has also developed an end-to-end platform that is focused on AutoML, where it's built for citizen data scientists. However, they provide a lot of knobs and tuning capabilities where experienced data scientists can still leverage that AutoML capability, but add in their own recipes, import their own models or hyperparameters in order to take advantage of that platform. Another key thing that the H2O end-to-end platform provides is in interpreting machine learning models. So this is something that I didn't touch upon at the beginning of the talk, but the need to actually explain your model and the decisions that it made when you put it in production is critical. So one of the key things that platforms like H2O or DataRobot, the capability that it provides is that once it trains a model, there's a whole report that is generated that can be used for compliance purposes. So once this model is deployed and it's in the real world and making predictions, if for some reason there's a request to understand why a certain decision was made, you have all that information already captured in your platform and saved. It allows you to keep track of a lot of these different types of information that typical data science team, they don't spend time doing that because it's looked upon as overhead. So in addition to all these features that the platform offers, H2O has a services arm that can help with machine learning projects. Again, we talked about how it is important to set the right goals. So H2O and DataRobot both have customer-facing data science teams that can help and assist the teams that need help in going through a couple of AI projects to understand the best practices and understand the skills that are needed to take those projects to completion. H2O also plugs in with your data analytics environment, so it can work with Hadoop, it can work with Spark. So one of the things that you'll see reference architectures that we worked on is for those environments. However, the one that I'm going to talk on first is a product called Driverless AI. So Driverless AI is the H2O's key product that actually incorporates their AutoML capability. And this is a tool that has a graphical interface that is targeted for citizen data scientists. But as I mentioned, it can be leveraged by your expert and experienced data scientists to do a lot more, understand the models, document the models, and put them in production as well. So this is actually running on a single R740 server. Driverless AI today, the product doesn't use multiple servers. It doesn't, it leverages multiple cores and multiple CPUs, but on a single system. However, in their roadmap, they do have a line of sight for Driverless AI where it runs and leverages distributed computing. However, what we see is typically you have enough compute capability in a single server today to have a single data scientist or multiple data scientists run H2O Driverless AI instances within a single system. And as we look at a couple of other solutions like Sparkling Water, which is targeting embedding H2O machine learning algorithms in Spark, we can scale to multiple nodes here and take advantage of the power of high-performance computing. And then finally, you also have the capability of running on a high-performance computing cluster, bare metal Linux, without leveraging Spark if that's what is needed by your teams. So kind of now switching gears, we talked about key end-to-end machine learning platforms and partners. All of those capabilities are very high-end capabilities. These are steps that are performed by data scientists where they might try to leverage open source tools and put together a recipe where they might take multiple tools and try to get it working with their existing data analytics environment. So for companies, organizations that want their data scientists to be productive and they leverage a commercial tool like DataRobot, Iguazio, or H2O to deliver that platform for their data scientists. However, we also see organizations that still want to take advantage of open source because there are a lot of tools in the machine learning ecosystem that are open source and available in the ecosystem. So we partnered with a company called Grid Dynamics to actually put together a reference architecture to address those customers. So we work with Grid Dynamics to take advantage of an up and coming tool set called Kubeflow, which is an opinionated way to actually put together a lot of these existing tools and run them on top of a Kubernetes cluster or in a cloud-native environment. So with Kubeflow 1.0, which was released earlier this year, teams can deploy models using Jupyter notebooks or develop models using Jupyter notebooks, and then they can use Kubeflow tools to build models within containers and then use the Kubernetes resources to actually train the models. And then once they have a model that's trained, they can use Kubeflow environments like Seldon serving or Kubeflow serving to put those trained models into production. and all of this can run in a cloud-native environment. And the beauty of this is that you might have this environment built in your data center or across multiple data centers, and you don't have to change your code. So this is kind of a platform as a service environment where once you've written the code, it can run in any of these different Kubernetes environments without having to change the code. So to build this Kubeflow reference architecture, we actually leveraged or partnered with multiple operating system vendors who have their own Kubernetes distributions. So we worked with Canonical to use Charmed Kubernetes, and then we also worked with SUSE to deploy and run this on their container as a service. So you don't have to change the underlying operating systems or environments and tools that you're used to. If you're a Canonical environment today, we have a Kubeflow reference architecture that will run on top of Canonical. And then if you are in a SUSE environment, you should be able to run this without leveraging the same tools that you have in your SUSE environment. One of the key things is that even though this is using open source components, we had to actually work with multiple different partners in order to validate and test this and identify some key deficiencies that existed if you wanted to put this in production. So Kubeflow by itself can be deployed and run easily in public cloud like Google's cloud, because a lot of the development happens there. However, once you want to run it in on-prem environment and integrate with your multi-user authentication technologies that you have running in your stack today, there needed to be integration points that didn't exist. So some of those had to be developed with these partners and is available as part of the reference architecture. All right, so we talked about some of the key partners that we work with in order to bring some solutions into the market. That takes care of a lot of the tools and skills, resources when it comes to developing models, working on these AI projects. However, in addition to the tools, you want to have augment the skills that you have or hire additional skills into your company to work on these projects, right? So there are a lot of different services offering that is provided by Dell. So we talked about when you pick a partner, you could either go and talk to different partners or different vendors in order to put that solution together. But one of the key advantages that partnering with someone like Dell Technologies offers is that in addition to the solutions that we just talked about, you also have the capability to work with Dell, who can bring in the right resources to provide services, consulting services, for example, on how by offering workshops on identifying the right use cases, making sure that the data needs for your AI projects are in place, and then even deploying or maintaining the solution as well as needed. So from that perspective, we have a lot of customers that like Dell because they can get all of this from a single vendor. So I definitely recommend that as you go down this journey of incorporating AI and trying to adopt AI in your organization, to look at the different offerings that Dell has in this space, not just from hardware infrastructure or software stacks, but also in terms of other capabilities from a services and consulting perspective to help augment and be a partner in your journey here. So I think with that, that was my last slide. Peggy, do we have questions?
We do. Thanks so much, Ramesh. I really appreciate your presentation. Now, before we begin with today's Q&A, please direct your attention to our webinar survey. It's available to the right of the presentation window. If you close the survey, you can reopen the widget by clicking the icon along the bottom of your screen. We thank you in advance for filling out the feedback form. Your participation in this survey allows us to better serve you. Okay, now on to the question and answer portion of our event. As a reminder to participate, simply type your question into the text box located to the right of the presentation window or click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. If we're not able to answer all submitted questions during today's webinar, we'll be sure to share them with Ramesh, who can reply to you offline. Okay, here we go. Number one, if there was one key takeaway, one piece of advice for people looking at AI solutions, what would it be?
I think picking the right partner, I think something that we discussed at the very end. If you're just getting started with AI, I think there's a lot to go tackle. We talked about 5 different things here, right? So having the right partner in this space so that you can learn. In the beginning, I talked about standing on the shoulders of giants. So there are companies that have been through this journey that have learned this. And similarly, there are companies that have worked with other companies that have started on this journey. So there's a whole process here, of best practices. And I think that's something that a few technology companies in the industry today have, where they have worked with folks that are going down this journey over and over again. So I think identifying the right partner so that they can work with you to identify the gaps, either in your software stack, in your hardware infrastructure, or in terms of skill sets, and then help you down that journey to make sure that you achieve success with at least start off small with a single project. So if I had to step back and summarize again, I would say pick 1 or 2 projects to get started on AI, and then pick a partner to help you walk the journey on that one project so that you can identify what exactly it is that you need in terms of key resources, whether it's skill set or tools, and then after that you'd be ready to kind of take on more and adopt AI.
Okay, terrific. Here's another question. What can I do with these customer solution centers, and do they have a cost?
So the question is on the customer solution centers that Dell provides. So we have a global, multiple global customer solution centers that's dispersed across the globe, and these are available for our end customers to do POC projects or proof of concept projects, work with our customer solution architects to evaluate different solutions. So, we talked about DataRobot and Iguazio and these other vendors that we partnered with. All these solutions are deployed and available at these customer solution centers for you to access and test drive these solutions. So you can actually, if you have your own data and you want to run it or test drive each of these solutions and see which is better suited for your needs, you can definitely leverage the customer solution centers, and it is free of charge to use.
Okay. Is there remote access to these customer solution centers?
Yes. So there is capabilities where a lot of these projects are done remotely. So you will receive VPN access in which you can move your data and start accessing the resources in the customer resource center to do your projects and evaluate and compare and contrast these different solutions.
Okay. And what is the Intel AI Builders Program?
Yeah. So Intel, is a key partner of ours. So Intel has a program called Intel AI Builders Program, which is where they work with ecosystem partners across the industry to build and validate solutions, just like what we've done here. So the solutions that we actually talked about today was something that was done with Intel as part of Intel AI Builders Program. And Intel has tools of their own that are targeted for AI workloads. So they have Intel optimized machine learning libraries that run and take advantage of Intel hardware. And so as part of the Intel AI program, AI Builders Program, Intel works with the ecosystem partners to make sure that these optimized code, the best practices on how to take advantage of Intel's CPUs, network cards, and Optane memory is all packaged together into optimized solutions.
Okay, got it. Thank you. That's all the time we have left for questions today. Thanks, Ramesh. Information Week appreciates your time and expertise on today's topic. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Dell, as well as everyone in the audience. We appreciate your attention and participation. Within the next 24 hours, you'll receive a personalized follow-up email with details and a link to today's presentation on demand. Please feel free to invite your colleagues and peers who may not have been able to listen to today's event. This webinar is copyright by Informa. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted by Information Week and Dell, and the individual speaker is solely responsible for his content and his opinions. On behalf of our guest, Dell, I'm Peggy Bresnick-Kendler. Thanks for your time, and have a great day.